The widow had only one bucket of milk left. It wasn't enough for both of her children. As tears filled her eyes, a rugged mountain man stepped through the broken ranch gate carrying nothing but an axe and a bedroll. Looking at the hungry children, he quietly made an offer that stunned her. "Give my kids milk and I'll fix your ranch." And she thought he was asking for charity. Instead, he was offering her a future. Stay until the very end, because one simple promise made before winter would change 4 lonely lives forever. If you enjoy heartfelt Wild West stories filled with hope, sacrifice, and unforgettable endings, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's begin. The last golden light of autumn stretched across the lonely prairie as cold winds swept through the weathered fences of Abigail Turner's struggling ranch. Since her husband died the previous winter, every burden had fallen onto her shoulders. The barn roof leaked whenever it rained. Half the fences had collapsed. The windmill barely turned anymore, leaving the livestock without enough water. Winter was only weeks away, and Abigail knew the ranch would never survive another season without help. Inside the small farmhouse, her 6-year-old son Tommy tried to comfort his little sister Emma, whose tiny stomach growled louder than the crackling fireplace. Abigail poured the last bucket of fresh milk into 2 small cups, pretending she wasn't hungry herself. She smiled for her children, but once they looked away, silent tears rolled down her face. That evening, someone knocked gently on the front gate. Standing there was a broad, shouldered mountain man wrapped in a worn buckskin coat. His beard was touched with gray, and years spent trapping in the wilderness had left deep lines across his weathered face. Beside him stood 2 tired pack mules carrying traps, tools, and a rolled-up blanket. "My name's Jacob Hayes," he said politely. "I've been working the mountains all summer." Abigail nodded cautiously. "I can't afford to hire anyone." Jacob glanced toward the children watching through the window. He noticed the nearly empty milk bucket beside the porch and the worried look on Abigail's face. After a long silence, he quietly spoke. "Give my kids milk and I'll fix your ranch." Abigail frowned in confusion. "I don't understand." Jacob smiled gently. "I lost my wife years ago. My children are staying with my sister in the valley until I earn enough to bring them home. Every dollar I make goes to them. I don't need wages." He looked around at the broken fences, leaning barn, and damaged windmill. "But your children need this ranch." Abigail stared at him. No stranger had ever offered help without asking for something in return. "Why would you do that?" Jacob looked toward the fading sunset. "Because once, someone saved my family when we had nothing." His answer was simple, honest, and impossible to forget. After a long pause, Abigail finally nodded. "You can stay." The next morning, before sunrise, Jacob was already repairing the broken fences with skilled hands that had survived years in the wilderness. Tommy followed him everywhere, eager to learn, while little Emma proudly carried nails in her tiny apron pockets. For the first time since her husband's death, laughter returned to the old ranch, but neither Jacob nor Abigail noticed the rider watching them from a distant hill. A wealthy landowner named Silas Crow lowered his binoculars with a cold smile. He had spent months trying to force Abigail to sell her ranch. Now, the arrival of one mountain man threatened to destroy everything he had planned. Jacob worked from sunrise until long after sunset, never asking for a single dollar. Within days, the broken fences stood strong again, the barn roof no longer leaked, and the old windmill turned steadily, filling the water troughs once more. Tommy followed him everywhere with a small hammer tucked into his belt, dreaming of becoming as strong as the mountain man one day. Little Emma waited each evening with a warm smile and a tin cup of fresh milk. To Jacob, those simple moments were worth more than gold. Abigail watched quietly from the farmhouse porch. At first, she believed Jacob would leave as soon as the work was finished, like every hired hand before him. But each morning he found another job to do. He repaired wagons, chopped enough firewood for the entire winter, reinforced the chicken coop, and even built a small sled so the children could play after the first snowfall. One evening, as they shared a simple supper, Abigail finally asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. "You keep helping us, but what about your own children?" Jacob smiled sadly. They're safe with my sister. Every season I trap enough furs hoping next year will be the year I bring them home. I made them a promise. Abigail lowered her eyes. So did I. I promised my husband I'd never lose this ranch. Before Jacob could answer, the sound of galloping horses echoed across the yard. Silas Crow rode through the front gate with 3 hired men. He climbed down from his horse wearing an expensive coat and a smug smile. "Mrs. Turner," he called, "your loan is overdue." Abigail's face turned pale. "I just need more time." "You've had enough time," Silas replied coldly. "By the end of the week, this ranch belongs to me." Tommy stepped closer to his mother, frightened. Jacob calmly walked forward and stood beside the widow. "She isn't selling." Silas laughed. "And who are you?" "Just a mountain man." Silas looked around at the repaired fences, the restored barn, and the healthy cattle. "So you're the fool wasting his time saving a dying ranch." Jacob didn't flinch. "A ranch isn't dying while good people are still fighting for it." Silas's smile disappeared. "You'll regret standing in my way." With that, he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving deep tracks in the frozen dirt. That night, the first heavy snow of winter began to fall. As the wind howled outside, Jacob quietly checked every window and added more logs to the fire. Abigail looked at the children sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. She realized something she hadn't dared believe since her husband's death. They weren't facing winter alone anymore. But miles away, Silas Crow was gathering men to force the family off the ranch before Christmas, and Jacob knew the hardest battle was still ahead. By morning, the ranch lay buried beneath a blanket of snow. The wind howled across the prairie, but inside the farmhouse, the fire burned warmly. Tommy and little Emma laughed as Jacob showed them how to carve small wooden animals from scraps of pine. For the first time since their father's death, the house felt alive again. The peace didn't last. Just after noon, Silas Crow returned with the county banker and 4 armed riders. He carried a folded document in his hand. "The widow has failed to repay her loan," Silas announced. "By law, this ranch is mine." Abigail's heart sank. She searched every drawer, every box, hoping she had overlooked enough money to make one more payment. There was nothing. Silas smiled. "I'll give you 1 hour to pack." Tommy clung to his mother's skirt while Emma began to cry. Jacob quietly stepped forward. "You'll have your money?" Silas laughed. "And where will a mountain trapper find that kind of cash?" Without answering, Jacob disappeared into the barn. A few minutes later, he returned carrying 2 heavy fur packs he had spent an entire winter collecting. Beaver pelts, fox furs, and rare mountain hides. Everything he owned. "I was saving these," Jacob said softly. "I planned to sell them so I could bring my own children home." The yard fell silent. He placed every bundle at the banker's feet. "This should cover her debt." The banker carefully inspected the valuable furs before nodding. "It's more than enough." Silas's face turned red with anger. "You'd give up everything for a ranch that isn't even yours." Jacob looked toward Abigail and the children. "Some things are worth more than money." Defeated, Silas mounted his horse and rode away, knowing he had lost forever. As the riders disappeared into the snow, Abigail could no longer hold back her tears. "You sacrificed your dream," she whispered. Jacob smiled gently. "No." He looked toward the warm farmhouse where Tommy and Emma stood waiting at the door. "I found a new one." Weeks later, word of Jacob's kindness spread across the valley. Neighbors came together to help rebuild the ranch completely. They repaired the barn, donated livestock, and even raised enough money for Jacob to finally bring his own 2 children home. On a bright spring morning, 2 shy children stepped down from a wagon and ran into their father's arms. Tommy and Emma welcomed them like family. Soon, laughter echoed across the ranch from sunrise to sunset. One evening, Abigail carried 2 cups of fresh milk onto the porch, where Jacob was watching the sunset over the fields. She smiled and handed him one. "Do you remember your first words to me?" Jacob laughed. "Give my kids milk, and I'll fix your ranch." Abigail took his hand. "You kept your promise." Jacob looked at the children playing together near the windmill. "So did you." Months later, the little ranch that had nearly been lost became the happiest home for 2 once broken families. The fences stood strong, the cattle thrived, and the lonely mountain man who had arrived with nothing but an axe and hope finally realized that the greatest reward wasn't the ranch he had saved. It was the family he had found. Sometimes, one act of kindness can survive the coldest winter. Sometimes, one promise can build a home. And sometimes, the people who rescue each other become the family they were always meant to be. If this emotional Wild West story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that kindness, sacrifice, and love can change lives. We'll see you in the next unforgettable frontier story.